Hey everyone, thank you for joining us in the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. Today we're going to talk about emotional and intuitive eating. I'd like to welcome registered dietitian nutritionist Shira Hirshberg with All Foods Nutrition. Shira, come on in. Hello, how are you?
Doing great.
Good, so good to see you. So this is a very interesting topic. I know a lot of people will want to be interested in this today because emotional eating, and you say it's not quite that simple. It's not just about eating when you're happy, you're sad, you're depressed, you're stressed.
Right.
It's not that simple. So let's get into this.
Okay.
Emotional eating, it's not that simple.
Right. So I think that's the commonly used term, emotional eating. And a lot of people come in and that's what they tell me their problem is. They're like, oh, I'm an emotional eater. I can't control it. I have no willpower. People really like to blame themselves. And, I really like, instead of using the term emotional eating, I like to make the distinction between hunger and appetite.
Okay.
And so hunger is physiological in nature. It comes from your body. Your body is giving you some sort of signal that tells you it wants food. So the common one we think of is a growling stomach, but everybody has signals that are a little different. If I go too far, I get shaky, I get irritable. Maybe we might call that hangry.
Yeah, hangry is the good one. Yeah.
And people get different signals. Some people feel a headache, some people get a little nausea.
Yeah.
So everybody has their own signals that maybe just your stomach feels empty, but that's physiological, right? And our body's telling you need food and it's giving you signs. In terms of appetite, that's something that comes from somewhere else. So it might be emotional, it might be psychological, it might be medications, it might be environment, it might be you walked by something and it looked good and you wanted to eat it. So
Smell,
absolutely.
like, ooh, those cookies smell good.
Yep. So all of these other senses and all the other reasons that we eat, besides physiological hunger, I would classify as appetite. So certainly there are some emotional components. People eat for a variety of emotional reasons, right? Happy, oh, let's celebrate, let's have cake. Or other positive emotions might be, I had a really hard day, but I did a good job and I deserve X, Y, or Z. But then there's also negative emotions, and this is the one people most commonly associate with the phrase emotional eating, which is, I'm miserable, I need a brownie, cookie, chip, pizza, whatever the fill in the blank is there. If somebody goes through a breakup, what do you bring them?
Ice cream.
Right, that's the one. It's not broccoli. No one brings broccoli.
No, that would be a terrible friend.
So we all have these things that we associate with emotional eating, right? But there are all of these other reasons that often we go to the side, but are big ones in terms of reasons we eat that are outside of hunger.
Okay. And it almost is one of those things, maybe we need to start associating the word appetite differently, right? Because when you were sending me this information, I'm like, oh, just going back to that word, like you have a healthy appetite, right? So maybe we just need to start using word associations with food differently.
Absolutely.
And changing our mentality, right? So we're going to help you get into that process today. Instead of using emotional eating and stop being so hard on yourself, right? We all need to quit being so hard on ourselves.
Self-compassion is hard, but it's important.
It's important, especially when it comes down to food, because I think just in our society, a lot of people can relate to this type of eating in some way or another.
Absolutely. And everybody's going to do it. Like, we're going to talk about some coping mechanisms and strategies and other ways of doing things, but this will happen anyway, and that's okay. But it's good to be aware. Instead of saying, okay, I really need this brownie, you can say, all right, the brownie looks delicious. I'm not hungry at all. I'm going to eat it anyway. But at least it's good to have that conversation with yourself and to understand your own motivation.
Okay, so that's step one. Okay, so we've established between hunger and appetite. So those are two totally different things, and being aware of them is something good that we want to do. So if we are talking about kind of those two difference, and so what kind of falls, we've kind of talked about what falls under appetite. How can we manage our appetite? Because we're thinking, oh, I smell a cookie, or I see a brownie, or that kind of thing. Like, how do we where do we go about starting to get all of that under control?
So I think the first thing is taking care of your basic nutrition. So if you're somebody who is well fed, you're satisfied, you eat healthy, balanced meals regularly, then you're going to be less drawn to that stuff than somebody who is hungry, depriving themselves. So if you're somebody who's trying to be so careful that they're eating really small breakfast and then a tiny snack or no snack and then a small lunch, you're very easily going to fall for all of those things because your body is already crying out for them, and then it's hard to say no. So for me, the big foundation is actually taking care of that physiological side so that at least if you're going to fight that battle, it's not going to be on empty. Yeah. So it's important to be satisfied. I find most people notice it's a lot easier to say no to some of that stuff, or at least to some amount of that stuff, when they're full, satisfied, comfortable. If they're underfeeding themselves to try to lose weight, it's very hard to say no to that kind of thing. You're going to walk by the donuts in the office and you're going to say yes, absolutely, because your body is saying, give me food, and you're not going to be able to resist. But if you've had a healthy, balanced snack or meal recently, then it's a little easier to say no or take a smaller amount or save it for a time when you're actually hungry.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you have less of a chance of overeating, overindulging if you've been eating throughout the day, and you have a better chance of making those good choices or better choices or more informed choices if you're not starving yourself,
And some people aren't doing it to lose weight. Some people are doing it because they're too busy to eat or they forget to eat or any other reason. But your body, let's say you have this pattern. You come home at night, you eat a reasonable dinner, you feel full and satisfied, but 1 hour, 2 hours later, you're starving again. You find yourself snacking all night long. Yeah. To me, that's not a sign of low willpower. It's a sign that you undereaten during the day and your body is just saying, I need to make up for this. I'm so hungry.
That makes sense.
This is the time that I've got, and this is when I have access to food, and this person's listening to me now. So a lot of people like to blame themselves for that time of night, but often it's actually physiological. It's because they're underfed during the day for a variety of reasons.
So I emailed you and was like, so is it bad I had 3 rolls of sushi all by myself? Which one am I falling under here? Probably a little of both.
Absolutely. And you're going to have some nights that you're hungrier than others, and that's fine. Maybe you didn't eat quite enough during the day, and that's normal.
I want 3 rolls of sushi, and I need 3 rolls of sushi.
The way you tell the difference is because if you got to 2 rolls of sushi and you were like, I am completely full, and then you had the third one, then there's something else going on, right?
That's when it's the appetite.
Yeah, exactly. It's when you're totally full and you continue to eat that then there's that psychological component or appetite involved.
Okay, and that's when you need to take a step back and think about what's around you that's filling that in. Okay, so you said that to help with this, we should think about intuitive eating. So what does that mean?
So intuitive eating, I'm going to show you a couple books actually. So
not from Zoe Niles.
This is where I started to learn about intuitive eating, is this book, Intuitive Eating, A Revolutionary Program That Works. It's written by Evelyn Tribole and Elise Resch. I don't know if I'm saying that last name correctly. They have a newer intuitive eating workbook, so if you're somebody who is a good self-study person, then this kind of walks you through and has things to fill in and all that stuff to learn more about it. But this is the basic information. But then my version of this is kind of this information plus what I've learned in clinical practice myself over the last few years. So there are some, 10 basic steps, and I kind of have my version of those. So the 10 basic steps are right out of that book. So I'm just going to go through them just to give you a brief overview.
Okay.
So first is reject the diet mentality. And so that's part of what I talked about with, you can't say that I'm going to deprive myself, right? These diets don't work for a reason. So saying that that's not, you're not going to follow any more diets. You're going to refuse to do that. Honor your hunger. So that's a little bit of what we talked about. Yes, you should eat when you're hungry and you need to listen to those signals. Make peace with food. So that's accepting that there will be things that are not perfect in your diet. So that's part of it, and that's okay, and that's a part of normal eating.
I like that because I think we all, sometimes you just want a piece of chocolate, and it's okay to be able to have a piece of chocolate.
Exactly.
You don't need to eat the whole bag of fun-size Reese's, right? But to have a piece of chocolate every now and then.
Yeah, but if long term you have a ton of foods on your bad list, then that's not actually an intuitive or healthy relationship with food.
Okay, so and managing that is what this list is all about.
Right, exactly. Challenge with food police. So that's those voices in your head that say, that's a bad food, or don't eat that, or that'll make you fat, or that's too fattening, right? Those kinds of phrases are the food police.
Okay.
So learning to challenge those. Feel your fullness. So that's what we talked about with the sushi roll. Like, when did you get to full, and understanding that. Part of that is taking enough time to eat so that you get those signals, right, at least 20 minutes before your body's going to send them. So you need to take that time, or there's no way you can hear them.
So stop shoveling food in your face.
Yeah, learn to eat more slowly.
Okay.
Discover the satisfaction factor. Food should involve joy.
Okay, yeah.
Right? You should get satisfaction, joy, contentment from food, but just a reasonable amount of it. And, eventually, once you go through this process, the idea is that you feed yourself things that serve you.
And I think that also kind of ties in with enjoying your food slowly, right?
Right.
Because you can't really
get more deliciousness out of it if you take your time.
Yeah, you can't really enjoy it if you're scarfing it down. But if you're starving yourself all day, right?
You're going to scarf it down. Your body will make you
hungry.
Right.
Okay, so these all really tie hand in hand.
Yeah. So cope with your emotions without using food. So obviously we bring ice cream when we had a breakup. We talked about that. That's one thing we do, but it can't be your only way. If it's your only way, you need to figure out more. And sometimes that involves help from the outside.
Yeah.
Right? Because if let's say you're, in middle age and you have no other ways to cope with difficulty in your life, professional help might be a useful way to start, right? That's what therapists and psychologists do, is they help people develop coping mechanisms. Well, it's one of the many things they do. So that's something to think about, is, do you have alternatives? What are they? Can you plan for those? But if you have none, and maybe you need help finding some. And that's a totally reasonable thing to do. Respect your body, right? And that might be whatever size it is, right? Because if you have a lot of self-hatred, you're not going to do well with your goals at the present moment unless you can let go of some of that. So
I like that.
It's not saying that, you're not hopeful it will ever change, but the goal is not to change your body. The goal is to eat according to what your body is telling you and learn to do that. That has to be the primary goal. If you don't let go of the goal around actual pounds, it's a little hard to do this fully. Exercise, feel the difference, right? Exercising not to burn calories, but to feel good is the focus.
Okay. So being able to, instead of going because you ate a piece of cake, so going to the gym with the intention to burn off that piece of cake, going to the gym because it makes you feel better and it's helping you be stronger and increase your wellness in overall day-to-day life.
Right, exactly. And there are many reasons to exercise that are about how you feel, right? We've got good data to show that they help improve your mood. They help reduce depression. You don't know all the stats on that, but certainly it helps manage mood for people. It makes you feel more energetic. It helps you sleep better. So we have all these things that we know improve the way we feel. And most people know just by doing it that they feel better when they exercise. So that has to be the motivator. And when we talk about that, it has to be something you like to do. If you hate going to the gym, you're probably not going to do it long term. So you've got to find something that brings you some joy, or at least you don't dislike, right? And then last is honor your health, gentle nutrition. So while eating healthy, well-balanced meals should be part of it, it should be gentle, and it shouldn't be something that is has to be absolutely regimented and you do all the time.
Because then you won't stick with it, right?
It's not manageable, it's not maintainable.
You're going to lose it.
Exactly.
I like all those things, and I think just going in with that, it seems like a really well-balanced way of approaching what you're eating and just a lifestyle, right?
Absolutely. It's something I love to work on with clients. It's one of my favorite things to do with people, because it really is about learning to listen to yourself and honor your body and do what your body is telling you. And usually people do lose a little bit of weight if they are doing things that are preventing that in the first place. So if they're someone who is undereating at a certain time of day and really overeating later, not stopping when they're full, then often some weight loss results, but it's just, you can't be the focus. The focus has to be health and wellness and feeling good.
I like that. Going back to, because this is kind of like if you're looking at that appetite, eating focused around the appetite portion, and we talked about kind of whether it's stress, breakup, boredom I think is a big one.
Huge.
Or just the environment, if you're in the office and people just bring goodies into the office, that's always a big one. Well, it's here, might as well eat it.
Right.
if you're in those kind of situations and you find yourself eating based on appetite often, how does one know if that's becoming, if it's crossing the line of just eating ice cream around a breakup, if it's becoming more than that, if it's becoming a problem? So maybe it crosses the line into binge eating, or it becomes a food addiction.
Sure. So in terms of binge eating, most people who say, unless they actually are diagnosed, a lot of people will throw that word around and they'll be like, oh, I binged on this.
It's becoming like casual slang, but if it's something, how maybe might someone know, or family might know, maybe this is turning into something
that's really a problem.
Yeah.
So what I would say is if, usually eating disorders are about control, not about the food itself. So if you're eating Oreos because you like them and you eat too many and you feel overfull because you like Oreos, that's not a binge, right? If you're eating Oreos because your life feels out of control and it's the only thing that you can do and there's no way you can stop eating and you feel really ill and terrible afterwards and you eat such an unreasonable amount that you feel like you have to do it in secret, or obviously anyone would assume that that's way too much food, then, that starts to get into that realm. But most people, when they say I binged on something, they're throwing it around and they don't really mean it. But certainly many people do have binge eating disorder and it's a serious difficulty.
Yeah.
But I would say, the average person who's eating emotionally might use that word, and it doesn't really mean that. So it really is about something different. The goal is different. So it just depends on what's motivating you. And if, control of your life is a primary motivator, then that starts to cross that line. But if it's really about that food and you're just unable to resist large helpings of ice cream, it's not binge eating disorder.
Okay.
In terms of food addiction, there is debate in the scientific literature and in the scientific community about whether food should be classified as an addiction. Some people say yes, some people say no. Certainly there's chemicals in the brain involved that are similar. They're activated when you eat things like sweet foods frequently and in large quantities that are similar to that, we see also rise in addiction behavior. But we certainly don't have a formal definition of food addiction or treatment yet. So, I would say that's something we're still sorting out.
So we're not going to go there.
Community.
And so if people, because I think it's such a topic, like you said, around that eating around appetite, it's something, if people feel like maybe they're getting to that point where it's becoming more than that, seek help in another field.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I would say, dietitians can often help you diagnose whether something else is going on. Like I said, an under-eating, overeating pattern, that's something I help a lot of clients with. And sometimes it's hard to see that in your own life because you're so used to your patterns that having somebody else look at the way you're eating and give you, their understanding of it can be really helpful. So if you feel like you are binging, or certainly if you feel like you have a food addiction, that's a reason to go see a dietitian and just, see what they think. It's helpful to have an outside perspective on that. If you feel like it's becoming a problem, go check in with somebody. So there's a lot of private practice and outpatient dietitians in Rhode Island. My favorite website is eatrightri.org.
Oh, yeah.
They have a Find an RDN section, so you can go there and see who's near you.
That's great.
In town.
That's a great resource. And then, of course, these books, Intuitive Eating, I think that's an overall, just for anybody who's interested in just making a change in their lifestyle, their overall eating and health patterns. What a great way to go into it, just to help you with your overall lifestyle, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think intuitive eating is something almost everybody can benefit with to some extent.
Just kind of an overall, make a little bit of a shift in the way you're looking at the way you're eating.
Exactly.
Great. Shira Hirshberg, registered dietitian, a nutritionist with All Foods Nutrition. You're changing your schedule up a little bit. You're going to be joining us on Fridays instead of Mondays. So we're going to wrap things up during the week on Fridays with headed into the weekend to help us make better food choices or easier food choices, or however you want to look at it. So thank you so much for joining us. And with that, we're going to bring out some food.
What better to follow into nutrition with actual food?
Exactly. I like that. So thank you so much, Shira. It's always good to see you.